Close your eyes for a second. Imagine the best place you've ever been, the most peaceful, the most beautiful, the most perfect. Now multiply that infinitely. That's what both Christianity and Islam promise their followers. An eternal destination so good, so overwhelming, so beyond human comprehension that every major theologian in both traditions has basically thrown up their hands and said, "We don't have the words." And yet both traditions have tried, for centuries, in extraordinary detail. And here's what nobody tells you. The heaven of Christianity and the heaven of Islam, two faiths that share the same God, the same prophets, the same holy city, describe their paradise in ways that are so different, it almost feels like they're talking about two completely separate places. One is almost entirely spiritual, a union with God so complete that everything else dissolves. The other is physical, sensory, lush rivers of honey, thrones of gold, gardens that stretch beyond imagination. Which one sounds better to you? Which one is more honest about what humans actually want? And most fascinatingly, which version does the text actually support? That's what we're unpacking today. No agenda, no preaching, just the sources, side by side. Let's go. Let's start with Christianity and immediately hit the first surprise. The Bible is remarkably vague about heaven. If you go looking for a detailed blueprint of the Christian afterlife room dimensions, what you'll eat, what you'll look like, you're going to be disappointed. Compared to what we'll see in Islam, the Bible is almost frustratingly sparse. But what is there is extraordinary. Let's walk through it. The Old Testament. In the Hebrew Bible, the concept of an individual afterlife is barely present. The focus is almost entirely on this world, God's covenant with His people, the promised land, justice in the present. The dead go to Sheol, that gray, silent realm we talked about before, and that's mostly it. Heaven in the Old Testament is where God lives, not where humans go. It's the divine address, not a human destination. That starts to change with the prophets. Isaiah and Daniel begin introducing ideas of resurrection, of a restored world, of the righteous being gathered, but it's still sketchy. The New Testament. Jesus talks about heaven. He calls it the kingdom of God, or kingdom of heaven, more than almost any other topic. But his descriptions are almost entirely through parables and metaphors. Heaven is like a mustard seed that grows into a great tree. Heaven is like a wedding banquet. Heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. What he doesn't do is sit down and describe the furniture. The most detailed physical description in the entire Bible comes in the book of Revelation, and Revelation is one of the most debated, most symbolic, most contested books in Christian history. Almost no serious theologian reads it as a literal blueprint. But let's look at what Revelation says anyway, because it's striking. Revelation describes the New Jerusalem, a city that descends from the sky after the resurrection and the final judgment. It has walls of jasper, foundations of 12 precious stones, gates of single pearls, streets of pure gold. A river of the water of life flows through it. The tree of life grows on its banks, bearing 12 fruits. There is no sun, because God Himself is the light. There is no night. There is no temple, because God's presence fills everything. It's beautiful, it's cosmic, and it's architectural in a way most people don't expect from the Bible. But here's the crucial thing. Revelation is describing the new earth after the resurrection, not a disembodied spiritual realm. The resurrected faithful live in physical bodies in a physically restored creation. Heaven, in the fullest Christian sense, is not floating on clouds. It's a renewed, perfected universe. Paul's letters. The Apostle Paul adds another dimension. In his letters, he describes heaven in ways that are almost mystical, almost impossible to fully grasp. He writes about being caught up to the third heaven and hearing things that no human is permitted to tell. He describes the resurrection body as something like a seed becoming a plant same. Continuity, completely different form, more glorious, more powerful, more real than the body we currently have. And his most famous statement on the subject, what awaits believers is beyond what the eye has seen, the ear has heard, or the human heart has imagined. That's not evasion. That's a deliberate theological statement. Heaven exceeds the categories of human understanding, the dominant Christian theological tradition. From Augustine through Aquinas, through modern theology, the beating heart of Christian heaven is one thing, the beatific vision, the direct, unmediated experience of God Himself. Not looking at God from a distance, but knowing God the way God knows Himself. A union of the soul with its Creator so total, so overwhelming, that it is itself the entire content of paradise. Everything else, the New Jerusalem, the resurrection body, the renewed creation, is secondary. Real, but secondary. Heaven, in classical Christian theology, is fundamentally about being with God. The scenery is almost beside the point. Now we move to Islam, and the contrast is immediate. The Quran describes paradise called Jannah, which literally means garden in extraordinary, specific, sensory detail. Across hundreds of verses, the Quran and the Hadith, the recorded sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, build a picture of paradise that is lush, physical, specific, and overwhelming. This isn't a criticism. It's a theological choice, and understanding why Islam describes heaven this way tells you something profound about the faith. Let's go through the key features. 1. The gardens. Jannah is almost always described in the plural. The Quran mentions 8 gates and multiple levels of paradise, each higher than the last. The highest level is called Firdaus. The word itself may come from the Persian word for garden, and it is directly beneath the throne of God. The gardens of Jannah are unlike anything on earth. Rivers flow beneath them, not rivers of water alone, but rivers of water, milk, honey, and wine that does not intoxicate. Trees bear fruit constantly. The climate is perfect. Nothing decays. The Quran says that in Jannah, believers will have whatever their souls desire and whatever their eyes find delight in. That phrase, whatever their souls desire, is deliberate. It's an open-ended promise. 2. The physical experience. This is where Islam's description becomes most distinctive. Residents of Jannah recline on thrones and couches adorned with gold and precious stones. They wear garments of silk and brocade. They are adorned with bracelets. They drink from goblets of silver and crystal. They eat, and the food is unlike anything on earth. Same name, different nature. A believer might eat a pomegranate in Jannah, and it would be called a pomegranate, but its taste would be entirely beyond the earthly version. 3. The companions. The Quran describes companions in Jannah called Hur al-Ain, often translated as Auris in English. This is one of the most misunderstood, most sensationalized, most taken out of context concepts in all of Islamic theology, so let's be careful here. The Quran describes them as companions with beautiful eyes, like pearls, untouched pure beings created specifically for Jannah. The question of whether this description applies to men only or to all believers, the question of what exactly companions means in this context, the question of whether this is meant literally or metaphorically, these are actively debated questions among Muslim scholars. What's important to understand, the mainstream Islamic theological interpretation is that Jannah provides complete fulfillment, emotional, relational, spiritual, for all its inhabitants. Not just physical pleasure, but perfect love, perfect companionship, perfect peace. 4. The social dimension. One of the most moving aspects of Jannah in Islamic tradition is that believers are reunited with their loved ones. The Quran explicitly says that righteous believers and their families who followed them in faith will be gathered together in paradise so that their eyes are delighted by each other, parents and children, spouses, friends. The Prophet Muhammad said in a hadith that a believer will be reunited with their spouse in Jannah and that spouse will be even more beautiful than they were in this world. This is deeply human. This is a heaven that understands that love for other people is not something to be transcended, it is something to be fulfilled. 5. The ultimate reward. And here is where Islam and Christianity come surprisingly close. Because after all, the gardens and rivers and thrones and companions, Islamic theology places one reward above all others. It is called the ruya, the vision of God. The Prophet Muhammad described it as, believers in Jannah will see God as clearly as they see the full moon in the sky, unmistakable, without any doubt. And the Quran says that for those given this vision, it will make everything else in paradise feel small by comparison. So even in Islam, the tradition that describes heaven in the most vivid physical detail, the ultimate reward is not the gardens. It's God Himself. Let's put them side by side. 5 dimensions. 1. Is heaven physical or spiritual? Christianity, divided. Most Protestant traditions emphasize the spiritual, the soul, with God. But the full biblical picture, especially Revelation, points toward a physical resurrection and a renewed creation. The body matters. The new earth is real. It's not purely spiritual. Islam, emphatically physical and unapologetically so. The body is resurrected. The pleasures are real, sensory, tangible. Islam is explicit that the goodness of this life points toward even greater goodness in the next. The physical is not something to escape, it's something to be perfected. The gap. Christianity tends to emphasize what heaven is union with God. Islam tends to emphasize what heaven contains, everything good, magnified. 2. Who gets in? Christianity. This is genuinely contested. Salvation through faith in Christ is the mainstream Protestant position. Catholics add the role of sacraments and works. But theologians debate. What about people who never heard of Christ? What about children? What about the righteous of other faiths? Different denominations give radically different answers. Islam. Entry into Jannah is ultimately by God's mercy, but the framework is more structured. Believers who submit to God and live righteously are promised paradise. Non-Muslims are not automatically excluded in all interpretations. Many Islamic scholars hold that righteous people who never received the message are judged differently. But the question of non-Muslims who did receive the message and rejected it, that's where the theology gets strict. 3. Are there levels? Christianity. The concept of levels exists, but is not dominant. Paul mentions a third heaven. Some traditions speak of different rewards for different levels of faithfulness. But the mainstream Christian view doesn't map out a detailed hierarchy. Islam. Yes, explicitly and in detail. The Quran mentions 8 gates of paradise, each corresponding to different righteous deeds. Scholars describe at least 7 or 8 distinct levels, with Firdaus at the top. Your position in paradise corresponds to your deeds and your closeness to God. Crucially, even the lowest level of paradise is so good that a person would feel they have everything they wouldn't even be aware of what they're missing at higher levels. 4. What do you do there? Forever? This is the question almost nobody asks, and it's the most philosophically interesting one. Christianity. Classical theology says the beatific vision is not boring because God is infinite. You spend eternity exploring an infinite being, and you never reach the end. There is always more to discover, more to know, more to experience. Theologians like C.S. Lewis described it not as a static state, but as a journey that has just begun further up and further in. Islam. Jannah combines rest, pleasure, worship, companionship, and the vision of God. Believers don't labor. They don't experience boredom or fatigue. Whatever they wish for appears. Time in Jannah is not experienced the way we experience it now. There is no anxiety about it running out. Both traditions from different angles are wrestling with the same impossible question. How do you describe infinite fulfillment to a finite mind? 5. What about relationships? Christianity. This is a complicated and often painful question for Christians. Jesus, when asked about marriage in heaven, says that people will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like angels. Many theologians interpret this as meaning earthly relationships are transformed, not deleted, but the exact nature is left undefined. Islam, far more explicit. Spouses are reunited. Families are gathered. Love is not dissolved, it's perfected. The relational dimension of Jannah is one of its most prominent features. Your loved ones are there. You will know them. You will be with them. Here's the part that most comparison videos skip, and it's the most important part. These two descriptions of heaven aren't just theological positions, they're responses to context. Christianity emerged from a world saturated with Greek philosophy. Greek thought was deeply suspicious of the body, deeply focused on the soul, deeply concerned with transcending the material world to reach pure form, pure truth, pure being. When early Christian theologians tried to articulate what heaven was, they reached for the highest concept in their philosophical vocabulary: direct union with the divine. Islam emerged in 7th century Arabia, a world of harsh desert, scarce water, limited comfort, a world where shade was precious, where water was life, where rest was a luxury. When the Quran describes paradise as a lush garden with rivers and shade, and abundant food and rest, it is speaking directly to human longing. It is saying, everything you've worked for, everything you've been denied, everything you've endured, it is waiting for you. Neither tradition is naive. Both know that the full reality of heaven exceeds any description. The Quran says explicitly that no soul can imagine what God has prepared for those who do good. Paul says that what awaits believers is beyond what eye has seen or ear has heard. They are both pointing at the same unspeakable thing and using the tools of their tradition to point at it. One uses the language of being, the other uses the language of having. Both are trying to say, it is beyond you, and it is worth everything. Two traditions, one God by their own account, and two pictures of paradise so different that for centuries scholars have debated whether they're even compatible. Christianity offers a heaven that is ultimately about what you become, a soul so filled with God that nothing else is needed. Islam offers a heaven that is ultimately about what you receive, a world so full of goodness, beauty, and love that every earthly longing is finally, completely answered. And here's what strikes me about both. Neither one sounds like nothing. In a world where plenty of people assume death is simply the end, that consciousness dissolves and everything goes dark, both of these traditions are making an extraordinary claim. They're saying that every person who ever lived, every relationship that ever mattered, every moment of beauty you ever experienced, none of it is wasted. None of it disappears. That's not a small claim. That might be the most radical claim in human history. Whether you believe it or not, it is worth understanding, because it has shaped the lives of over 4 billion people. It has motivated martyrs, built civilizations, comforted the dying, and inspired the greatest art in human history. That's what's at stake in this question. Here's what you walked away with today. The Bible's heaven is sparse in physical detail, but profound in its central promise: direct union with God. The Quran's Jannah is extraordinarily specific: gardens, rivers, companions, thrones, but its ultimate reward is also God's presence. Christianity emphasizes transformation of the soul. Islam emphasizes fulfillment of the person. Both agree, no human language is adequate, and both have tried anyway with magnificent results. So, I leave you with this question: the absolute spiritual union of Christianity, or the lush, perfected physical and emotional fulfillment of Islam? Which version of eternity do you think truly understands the human soul?